What is up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel, Mystic Watch, and today we got a new video going over hammers and anvils. So the main priority of this video is going to be talking about how you can get each of these, how you should use them, how they actually work, where to farm them, and what are the proper ways to get the most value out of them. So to start off, hammers and anvils are both pieces of enhancing stuff, right? They're both used for enhancing your equipment in one way or the other. All gear, regardless of common all the way to SSR, can have up to 5 substats, and you can reroll those substats, but each rarity requires a different amount of currency to reroll those substats. If you take a look at this rare gear, it takes only 10,000 gold to reroll a substat, and 3 anvils, whereas this SSR gear takes 2 gems or 5 anvils. What this means is that up until rare, because we don't really use SR gear since it's very inefficient, but SR gear also requires 1 gem to reroll substats. Pretty much, rare gear is the final gear that allows you to reroll substats with gold. And because of that, you can get a decent amount of boost. For example, if you're taking a look here, like my Escanor's got almost 44k CC, and it's gonna be a pretty big decrease, but let's say I give him this full rare set. You know, it's still like 40k CC, right? It's not like that big of a difference. And if I completely take it off, right? So let's say I just give it to someone else. Here, Rimuru, you can have it. So we take this off of Escanor. Escanor. So I went from almost 40k CC down to like 27, right? So you do lose, rare gear is a decent amount of substitute, but the whole point of this is not talking about the efficiency of rare or SSR gear. It's just to show you that rare gear is still usable. And yeah, I typically use rare gear before going into SSR gear, but now I'm at the point where I'm doing all SSR. With that being said, anvils are pretty important now because I want to reroll my substats, but I don't want to drop hundreds of gems rerolling my substats. And in the beginning it was fine to use gems because you were able to make decent gear where you just got to the point where it's like, okay, you're making a new set of equipment and you want to simply throw on, you just want it to be all the same stat. Example here, let's say you got these mixed stats in here, you got resistance and defense in here. Well, you want all defense. So you would take this resistance and you would just, even if you didn't have anvils, it was fine to use gems to just re-roll it into all defense. Because early on, it didn't matter what the percent was, you were still getting a decent amount of benefit out of it. But now we're at the point where we can consistently get anvils, and you should almost never use gems unless you are even if you are a whale, you would never use gems to reroll substats because you would just buy the anvil pack. And that's significantly better. But anvils should almost always be used on SSR gear, and actually used on nothing but SSR gear, to get the substat you want and then get it to a certain percent, and then hammers take over from there. So hammers are used to increase the substat amount. They will not change the actual substat, and I'll give you an example right here. I have this 2.7% defense. If I use an anvil or hammer there, brought up to 2.9. So there's a range on which hammers can improve. I believe it is 0.1 to 0.4, but 0.4 I've gotten maybe once or twice in my entire time doing gear in both JP and global. It doesn't really occur that often. Typically it's 0.1 or 0.2 tend to be your most common amounts that hammers actually give. And there is a chance that they can fail. Hammers are not 100% successful, and they'll never decrease your substat. They will only ever fail or increase it. So you never have to worry about that, which also makes them one of the most prioritized set of gear, right? There's a set of materials for gear enhancement. And where do you get each of these? Starting off with anvils. Anvils you get in a couple of places, right? They start giving them out a decent amount during events, but events are something that come and go and they're not always here, so I'm not going to talk about that too much. But the consistent ways to get it are now with the introduction of Actually, we'll say that last. Guild Boss is one, where you can get 50 anvils every week, and once they release Extreme Mode, you can actually get 100 anvils every single week when they come out with the full rewards, the individual rewards for scoring. But yeah, as long as you're getting your 1200 points every single week, for now, you're getting 50 anvils a week from there. So, okay, that's nice. 50 anvils a week, that's not too much, but where else can you get anvils? The other one being PvP. If you go over to the PvP shop, you can actually get for 2,000 points, you can get 100 anvils every week. Okay. PvP shop, PvP shop. Okay, here we go. Why? Why? Why do I gotta do that? Okay. So here under, what is this, miscellaneous, under silver, you can get 100 anvils for 2,000 points every single week. And you can actually reset this, right? So if you reset it with 1 gem, let's say you're farming PvP, you can actually use coin food, farm another good amount of PvP, and just keep buying this, like refreshing for 1 gem, buying it again, refreshing for 1 gem, buying it again. And that is something that's pretty commonly done as well. And this is where you get majority of your anvils. Besides that, like I said, you will get anvils on occasion from events. Like currently the 100-day bingo event is pretty good at giving out a bunch of materials. So if you go over here, like you get a lot of materials. Like I'm getting from 1 bingo board, I'm getting 10 down here. What is this? SSR crystals. You see you're getting 20 over here. I'll probably get another 10 or something on the next board as well. So they just kind of just give these out during events. But the other consistent way to get them is Training Cave, Training Dungeon. You go here, each of the individual fights have a chance of giving you anvils or hammers. So this is where you actually get hammers from as well. This is the only place you can consistently get hammers, like guaranteed hammers. You see here that you'll get 10 in total, plus any of the amounts from actually just beating the individual missions. And the harder missions have a better chance of giving you more of these. I don't know if level 1 fights actually give hammers, but we can actually take a look. We go here to the rewards. They do. You get 1, 3, and whatever. So you have a lower chance of getting them from level 1 fights, but they do drop them. So make sure you're doing this regardless of whatever difficulty you can do. Just make sure you're doing all 12 battles, because that's the most important thing. And let's head back. And then the final place that isn't like a farming related, like, you know, like event, like do a mission type thing, is gear gacha or equipment draw. So you can go here and you can actually get both of these, hammers and anvils. And anvils you get a decent amount over here. And if you guys don't know, my friend James, I actually don't know what his YouTube, I think it's like Shogun GC is his YouTube channel that he did. He actually made a video where he took 200 or almost 300 million gold and he did equipment draw for all of it in batches of 50 million and gave the exact amount of hammers and anvils he got. And I think at the end of it, after like 250 million, almost 300, he got like almost 100 hammers and a couple hundred anvils. It's actually a decent amount because at the end of the day, if you go here, you go to purchase bundle and you take a look at the hammer bundle, you can actually see that it's pretty expensive, right? So the fact that he got like 80 hammers and probably around like 500 anvils, maybe more, that's like you're talking about like $240 worth of bundles. And all he did was farm books and sell them every single time he did for money. And yeah, ideally people farm books during half stamina. But because we spend more money, we have a lot of stamina pots. Example being, if I go over here, you can see that I have 1600, and that's after I converted a decent amount into stamina already. And I used a lot on these as well, just because I was lazy. But yeah, we have a lot of stamina, meaning that we can farm gold a lot more. And as we play the game, stamina becomes less of an issue. You know, we have more base stamina now. a lot of things don't take too much stamina besides farming. Like, things like boss missions. But besides that, you're not really doing too much that requires that much stamina. So as you're summoning and they're giving out free multis and they're doing things like that, you're doing your daily free summon, you actually end up stacking up, even without spending money, you end up stacking up a decent amount of silver coins to the point where you can spend, like, you know, 50 stamina pots summoning for books or farming books and then selling them for money as well. But yeah, that's what I've been doing as well. I got up to around 100 million and then I farmed down to, or I spent them all on gear summons, which is how I got this many of my stuff. Now, the proper way to use them, now that you know how to actually get them, is... Oh, I'm not going to say the proper way to use them. This is how I personally use them. Is, let's say I'm creating a new set of gear from scratch, right? Like, I'm creating this piece right over here that's going to go on my HP defense set, right? And I'm finishing off an SSR piece. So what is the process that I do? What I normally do is, first, I don't worry about the substats until I fully awaken the entire thing. So let's actually... I actually won't spend too much time on doing this, I'll just show you. But I wait until the full thing is awakened, and then my process is, depending on, like, because there's only a few characters where you want something outside the basic substats, such as attack, defense, HP. For example, Valenti uses resistance, you give her resistance. You know, Jericho might use crit damage. Lilia will use, or Blue Lilia will use pierce rate. Demon Meliodas uses pierce rate. Okay. So I typically just do this, I awaken the thing, get it all the way maxed out. And then once it is, we'll pretend this is completely maxed. I simply go, and because I'm lazy, I'll do this, I'll bring this all the way down to 1%. And I'll just let it re-roll using my Anvils until I get defense. So let's say the goal of this one is to get defense, right? So I'll just roll it until I get defense. I do not care about the percent. Like, this one was a relatively good one. But then I'll do the same thing here. I'll bring this down to 1%. I'll roll, and I'll get everything into defense. Okay, this is way too lucky. This never happens to me off video. Okay? I never get things like this. But I'll do this, and, you know, I'll go through X amount of anvils. Okay, you gotta stop. Now let's pretend that I managed to do all 5, and all 5 are defense, and they're all varying ranges. And let's say they're below 2%. I then get... Once, I don't do this until I have all my pieces done, by the way. Like, if I'm deciding, like, okay, you know, my goal today is to make 3 pieces of SSR gear, right? And I want to swap, like, 3 pieces of rare gear into SSR gear. I want to go about doing that. So it's like, okay, you know, or we'll do 4 pieces. So we'll start with the main 4, the corner pieces. And it's like, okay. So once I do that and get all the substats, then I go to the important pieces and I start raising those substats. Do I have something with, like, low substats? This is good enough. So let's change this. Okay, give me a low roll so I can demonstrate this. Okay, see, now it's gonna take forever. But I go and I pick a piece and I just start re-rolling in order of lowest percent until it gets over. See, perfect. Okay. Like, oh, it's like, okay, so I want to make this piece better. What I would do is I'd re-roll this, and normally the amount I go for is I just hit 2%. And if it's above 2%, I'm happy with that, right? And I'll let it go until I get 2%, regardless of what it is. If it's exactly 2%, or if it's more than 2%, anything is fine with me. The ideal spot, in my opinion, to be at is like 2.5-ish. Like 2.4, 2.5-ish is like nice. Like anything above 2.4 or 2.5, you are perfectly fine. And there you go, right? 2.4. So let's say I get all of them up to 2.4-ish, or just 2%. What I'll do is the ones that are 2.4 and above, I will hammer those. But the order in which I hammer is I usually do the corner pieces first. It all depends on the set. If this is an HP defense, I'll do these 2 first. I'll get these up, and then I'll worry about these after. But we'll take this for example, right? It's like, oh, okay, I got a couple of pieces here. I'll hammer this once. And I don't hammer anything that is 2.9%. And the reason for that is because there's a chance of you being able to get, like, even though like you can get 0.1% every now and then, I tend to get 0.2% most frequently. What I'll do is I'll always hammer things that are below 2.9%. Oh, I hit the wrong button. Well, that's unfortunate. There goes my good roll. But for example here, I'll hammer this until it's at 2.9%. Because at 2.9%, I do not want to be using hammers at all. Because it feels like a waste to me. Because typically, you know, if you have a chance of getting more than, like right there, I got 0.2%. So here I'm perfectly fine with going again and potentially getting 3%. But at 2.9, you're only getting 0.1. There we go. So, like that's my method of going about hammering things, is I'll wait until I anvil them over to around 2.4, 2.5%, and then I will increase them from there with hammers. If they're below 2.4, I don't hammer those slots. I will try to re-roll them again with anvils to get them higher, but that's like a priority later down the line. I always make sure I go across all my pieces first to see if they're around like 13% stats, and then I go and use my hammers. And that's really it. That's the way I go about it. Now keep in mind that there are times where hammers are 100% successful during certain events, and you can wait to use your hammers until then. That is probably a better time to use them, but they fail like... If I hammer something like 20 times, it fails once. Like that has been my personal luck with it. I don't know if everyone else is around that mark, but they don't really fail too much in my... At least from when I've used them. So I'm not too worried about the 0%. Every now and then I stack them up. I'll try to get like 200 hammers and then I'll go from there. It's more fun that way when you see like a big jump in your gear. But it takes a lot of time as well. That's really it. Key points being exactly where to get each of the things. Your hammers and your anvils. Where can you farm them? Where are they available in the game? How do they actually work? And when to use them properly. And that's how I personally use them. I gotta go fix that piece of gear now because I completely ruined it. That's about it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I'll see you all next time. Well, have fun.